Hi, my name is Chris. I'm going to be talking today about esports and how they're the same, if not, they are sports, but many don't still consider them sports as opposed to traditional sports. My supporting points will be sports and what they are about at the core, the training regimes that both go through, and the levels of play that actually occur at both recreational and higher tier. For sports and what they're about, sports at the core, they're an activity either done by an individual or a team that requires some sort of skill, and you compete. That's what a sport is at the core. Esports have levels of physical exertion that aren't necessarily noticed by many. They often take forms in, basically for MOBA players, it's tennis elbow, which I don't think anyone will deny that tennis is an actual sport here. But tennis elbow occurs, they get neck problems, they get back problems. They're not traditionally what you think of as sport injuries when you think of traditional sports. Like for football, there's concussions, there's dislocations, there's broken bones, but they are still serious injuries. One player last year, one of the top North American Dota 2 players, Fear, that is his pen name, it's Clinton Lumos. He actually got put out for several months because of tennis elbow and missed one of the largest tournaments in the world that had a prize pool of several $1 million just because of an injury. Many still believe, even with these injuries, that esports in themselves, they aren't sports. ESPN's president, John Skipper, was actually cited saying, esports, it's not a sport, it's a competition. Sports at their core, they are a competition. They're a competition of skill. So if someone at the head of ESPN is actually believing this, that is an actual larger issue. The strict training regimes that esports players go through, some practice 12 hours a day, which is the case of one team that when they were interviewed by Rich Stanton of ESPN Go, actually, they practiced 12 hours a day and they got 1-2 days off a month. And esports in general, they don't have an off season. Baseball has an off season. Baseball's off season is winter. They go from April to October, and then they bring back up in the spring. But esports, they don't have an off season because all of these things are done indoors. There's no reason for an off season. These practices happen year round. And then some players, mainly solo players, they will practice. One player, Mason, who is a North American Dota 2 player, his practicing regime starts at 5 p.m. in the morning and goes till 12 p.m. the next day. And then he sleeps for 5 hours and he gets back up and practices more. These training regimes are very strict, and some are even more strict than traditional sports regimes. And the levels of play. Now everyone understands T-ball, and then there's Little League, and then you can go into high school and you can go into collegiate level. There's minor league and there's major league. It's the same with esports. There's the recreational level, which a lot of people will actually experience, which is just competition just between friends. But as you get higher and higher, age isn't really a restriction. One of the best Dota 2 players in North America is 15 years old, and he has made over $1.5 million just playing this game. And if you look in baseball, the ages are comparative. The minor league and the major league. The difference between them, minor league is about 24 years of age on average. Major league is about 28 years of age on average. The difference isn't really the age, it's their level of skill and the level of play. Sumail, he actually got his GED early just so that he could become a professional Dota 2 player, plays with the oldest current North American Dota 2 player, actually the oldest player in the world currently, who is Fear at 27 years of age, and he is actually way past his prime. The age ends in the early 20s for most esports players. And they have their peak, just like any other sport, and then they're done. They are sports players, they are professional athletes, but a lot of the generations prior to us, and even older generations, they don't recognize it because they see video games as just child thing. They're not actual. They don't take any skill to play. You just press a button and something happens on the screen. Either you did the button right or you did the button wrong, and then the outcome occurs. That's all they see video games as. But these are actual skill-based games that require dedication to become good at. Not everyone can become a professional gamer.
Do you have the second copy of your outline?
Yes.
Is it right here? All right, thank you.
Do you want me to use the parts of the speech?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I was talking. Is she next? Oh, sorry.
What was the time on that?
On that one?
Mm-hmm.
It was exactly like 10 minutes.
Thank you.
It was maybe tiny bit.
All right, Chris. I guess it's a definitional claim. They are sports. So we need a definition of sports, and I think that you start to do that, but all you do is kind of assert that it's a competition, and I think that there's probably more involved in that. There are lots of things that are competitions that I think people would be hesitant to call sports, and you need to explain what's different about these esports that meets those criteria. The closest you come to that is the notion that there is some physical activity involved that might produce some injury or some problem, and the example that you have is the tennis elbow thing. So it's a sport if it's a competition and you could potentially injure yourself. I'm still not convinced that that's a great definition, but at least it kind of gets you in the vicinity. It would be nice to have some information about the frequency of those kinds of injuries. The fact that you've got one person who's a well-known player and competes at a high level who has been injured in that way doesn't necessarily demonstrate that this is something that's a risk for everybody who's playing these sports, as you've described them. So I think there ought to be some data on this. My guess would be that you kind of make this assumption that people who see it as being a non-sport dismiss it as a skill. I'm not sure that they dismiss it as a skill. They probably dismiss it as being athletic in nature, and that's maybe where there needs to be a little bit more development of the controversy. The example was a little confusing of the young esport player, the Dota 2 player that you mentioned. You say, oh, he's young, he's 15, and he's making all this money, and you're saying how age doesn't matter. And then just 30 seconds later, you're telling me, but most people are washed up by the time they're in their mid-20s when it comes to this. So it's not quite clear to me. So if age matters, does that make it more about it being a sport because there is a peak period, because there is some athletic or physical component to the process? I couldn't really tell what inference you were trying to make with that particular point. The citation of an authority who works at ESPN, which is a sports network, who defines it as not being a sport, when you in essence say, well, there's something wrong with him because of that, well, that's what your whole argument is about. However, he appears to be an authority who ends up on the opposite side of the position as you, and I don't know that that necessarily means that he doesn't know what he's talking about. It simply means that he's got a different interpretation of the events than you do, and I think that you need to explain why your interpretation of events is the one that should prevail in our looking at this controversy. All right, thank you.